There's something scary from the swamp. This is your look at the NECA Toys Toony Terrors Hatchet, Victor Crowley. Bring the fun of Saturday morning cartoons to your horror collection with these adorable little creeps. Pick your favorites or collect them all to make every day Toony Terror time. Now, before we go ahead and start signing up for any local tours, which I would advise probably not the best of ideas if you've seen any of the Hatchet films, the first thing we're going to want to do is clock in and see how tall Victor Crowley stands. I'd like to thank as well the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the sample of Victor Crowley that we're having a look at in this review. Victor Crowley, along with many of this wave of Toony Terrors, are available right now in retail stores and online as well. Victor Crowley of the Toony Terrors release stands 6.5 inches tall. We can switch that to centimeters, revealing that Crowley is 16.6 centimeters tall. Now, bringing in some worthy candidates I feel would be a good comparison to put next to Victor Crowley. The obvious one I'm sure many of you guys would want to see is how he looks next to the Toony Terrors release of Jason Voorhees. You don't really see until you put them side to side how much bigger Victor Crowley is compared to Jason Voorhees. And did you know that Victor Crowley was also played by stuntman Kane Hodder, the same one responsible for bringing life to Jason in Part 7, 8, 9, and Jason X of the Friday the 13th franchise. So that's pretty cool, the fact that he now gets two movie monsters getting Toony Terrors release. I can't think of anyone else that has that title so far. And I feel also a worthy candidate, and perhaps an interesting battle I would love to see take place, is him next to Leatherface. Now, Leatherface here, at least as a Toony Terror release, is more squat. His knees, of course, are bent, and he's hunched over, wielding his chainsaw in his hand. But I feel like if you were to straighten out his legs, Leatherface would be proportionally about the same, I feel, as Victor Crowley. And just as another comparison, just because he's one of my favorites of the Toony Terror releases, there he is next to Michael Myers. A good bunch of Toony Terror releases, and NECA isn't finished doing these yet. We're going to be looking at this whole wave, but they're already slated to release the next batch of Toony Terror releases. I'm loving this line so far. You can see all the characters sort of still feel like they could inhabit the same cartoon universe. Even though they're different in design, I feel like they still lend well enough to the idea that they could look like they could be all in the same cartoon series. Crowley comes included with one lone accessory, but at least living up to the movie's title, it's that of a hatchet. Perfect for those that wander off the beaten path. It's slightly small in design, but you can see it follows the same formula of paint that they've done with other Toony Terror accessories. Specifically, it's this dark gray pairing, this dark gray blue, with the lighter blue on the edge of the blade. And just bring it in as a comparison so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Here's the Jason Voorhees machete. See, very familiar colors, that same grayish blue and that same lighter blue reflecting off the blade of the machete. In this case, it's on the very edge of the hatchet. I think that's really neat. You can see it's been painted quite well as well, giving a chestnut brown to the overall coloring of the handle, and of course going to that bluish gray color that we were looking at for the blade. That looks really neat. You can put this into his hand, but I'll tell you right now, there's only one option available, not to disappoint those that felt that they could put it in either one of his hands. The other hand is molded shut, so you can't actually put it right there. Leaves you only one option available. Line it up, fit it into the hole right here. And I will say, the hatchet fits perfect. It's not too tight to the point where I feel like I have to force it in there. It's not too loose to the point where I feel like the hatchet is going to be sliding in and out or falling out of his grip. It's baby bear just right. And that does finish the package off rather nicely, I feel, by putting the hatchet into his hand. You can bend also the arm up. He has limited articulation, yes, but it's more than enough to pull off the pose of him swinging that hatchet. We'll talk a little bit more about his posability in a second. Let's go ahead and take the hatchet out of his hand. We'll just put that to the side. Let's get a closer look at Victor Crowley. Now, if ever there be a strong candidate, what I feel could be a good movie character to transition into the world of Toony Terrors, Victor Crowley is pretty high on that list. I could imagine the gang of Scooby-Doo wandering too far off that beaten path, ending up in some swampland, and coming toe-to-toe, foot-to-foot, with this big brooding brute of Victor Crowley. Now again, they've taken just the right elements of Victor Crowley from the films. I feel he very much teeters that line in the middle of being scary, a realistic looking Victor Crowley, and yet still very cartoon centric. You can see the sculpting on his face, for example. He's got that big gash down the middle of his head, the blind eye on one side, and his slightly, I say slightly, his slightly mangled mouth, with two larger chiclets on the top, two smaller down below. It almost got like an off-coloring of yellow in there. I feel like the teeth could almost glow in the dark. They obviously can't. One thing I will credit NECA Toys for doing really well with this entire line is knowing how much paint to add to these figures. In fact, in all the cases when you've seen them, they don't feel the need of adding unnecessary shadowing or lighting to these characters. The coloring of what you see is what you get. There's no other color added anywhere on here. Even like the bumps, the imperfections, the little spots, lumps all over his body are kept to the same color as the rest of his skin. Because again, if you were to see this guy in the cartoon, I don't feel like, especially the older cartoons, they would have gone in there and added additional coloring. They really want to keep that as basic as they can. So because of that, I think it works well for this line to keep the coloring pulled back and don't feel the need to add any excessive coloring on top of it. Again, when we spin the head around, that's such a good looking head sculpt. But we spin it around though, you can see the placement of hairs. There's not hair running from one end to the other. There's all these little gaps in the middle. Again, accurate to the way it looks like in the movie. And they've even gone in there and painted all those areas as well. That doesn't seem like a section that's unfinished. Really liking the look of that. Again, you get the detailing on the back of his body with the spine sticking out and his misaligned torso. Again, you've got all those nice little bumps across it. I like the touch of having the center of his coveralls ripped where his spine is stuck through. That's a nice little touch. If you spin around to the front, he's got all these nice little stains on the front of it, whether it is oil, whether it's blood, whether it be combination of both. It's got all this grime all over his torso, all over these coveralls, in perfect places. Some on the torso, some on the lower legs, and some on the lower bottoms, the bottom areas of the cuffs of his pants. And of course, when you look at his boots, he's got some nice treading on the boots themselves. You can tip it upside down. And yes, just in case you are curious, I find the figure does stand. Standing is not so much an issue with Victor Crowley, but just in case, he does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. One thing I really would have liked to see from this line, and they haven't done it so far, is give us Toony Terror display stands. I think that would be fun. Little TV sets, for example, with simple antennas on the top and a little peg in the middle that you could put the figure on and maybe have the name on the front of it. I'm just only adding on to what I already like as this line as it goes right now. But I think the idea of just giving us that little retro TV stand, I think would be a fun touch to come included with these figures. Again, you got the little buckles there on the front done in a lighter blue. A little bit of paint, unfortunately, has bled its way onto the side, but overall the paint is clean on this guy. It's where it needs to be. And again, they don't feel the need to add any unnecessary paint to what I think is a really stellar looking body. So if you've been collecting any of these Toony Terror figures, you pretty much know by now that the articulation on these guys are quite limited. What you'll get with Victor Crowley is he'll have a ball joint in the head. So you can move the head up, you can move the head down, you can rock it back and forth, and you can get a full rotation. In case you are curious, the hairs are slightly softer plastic, just enough that when you're rotating it around the shoulder, not that you're probably going to be doing this too often, but you see the hairs go along with it. They don't get stuck and hung up. As for his arms, the arms rotate all the way around, just a single peg. That works the same on both sides. Now, because of, again, the fact that they've sculpted the arms and the fact that he doesn't have any articulation in the elbows, means that, yes, you're going to be quite limited with what you can do with the figure. You can have him screaming as the people are fleeing away from him. Or again, like you can have him with the axe, the hatchet in the other hand. Now, the only downside I find on this hand is if you look at it from this standpoint, if you have the hatchet in his arm this way with the arm down, it looks fine enough. I find when you bring the arm up, it kind of throws off, I feel, the look of the arm. Again, when it comes to these figures, the limitations on the articulation go well with the idea that this is a retro line of figures. He does also have articulation on the wrist on this one side, but he doesn't have it on this side. It's only on the one side of his body. This whole section right here of his torso, and might I also just say too, I also like the fact that the torso is broader up the top and very narrow right here. Works again like a cartoon model I would expect to see. He doesn't have any articulation here. This is basically just all molded plastic. And when it comes to his feet, again, it's all molded plastic. So really, for the case of Victor Crowley, he only possesses a ball joint here. hinges here and only 1 articulation point on the hand. So I guess that really only comes up to a total of 4 points of articulation. Again, the idea of buying this line, I feel, isn't so much that you're getting super articulated, superposable figures. We are, after all, going to be getting ourselves a retro cloth release of Victor Crowley, which I'm super excited for. But I like the fact that this line continues its trend of staying very rooted in the cartoons where they're supposed to inhabit. Victor Crowley, again, I feel like could be a very strong contender for a character I would expect to see in a Scooby-Doo cartoon. I don't think he's mangled enough, gnarly enough, that I think he would be too scary for a Scooby-Doo cartoon. Because if you've seen any of the older Scooby-Doo cartoons, I could imagine this kind of character inhabiting that world. Maybe not necessarily hacking people up with his machete, or his hatchet in this case, but I certainly feel he could be chasing down the gang. Just scaring them off, at least, until we reveal later that he was maybe the farmer, hoping to scare away visitors while he was digging up some remote gold. Toony Terror's Hatchet Victor Crowley delivers exactly what I would want this big brooding brute to look like if he ran into, say, the likes of Mystery Incorporated. I know I continue to use Scooby-Doo as the cartoon example, but where else would you find this ragtag bunch of monsters and creatures other than a Scooby-Doo episode? This could really be, I feel, like a case where the gang's gone off to solve a mystery, and along the ways they find themselves stuck in the swamp mud and come across the likes of Victor Crowley. You know, NECA Toys definitely has something on their hands, and I know they probably think that because they continue to release new waves of Toony Terrors. Collectors, and I know myself included, love this line because, again, you get all these characters that, for all intents and purposes, would inhabit their own movie worlds, and yet they all have the same style and look to them in a way that, even when you compare Victor Crowley, say, next to the likes of Michael Myers, somehow it works because they all kind of had that same very familiar styling to them. Victor Crowley, of course, is the biggest of the batch of what we've seen so far, and he does look like his movie counterpart, just slightly a little more cartoonier. If this isn't your fancy, don't worry, NECA Toys will be releasing a retro cloth release of Crowley as well, but while I will be jumping on board a retro cloth release of Crowley, I'm still quite smitten, I feel, with this cartoon lineup of Toony Terrors. And Hatchet's Victor Crowley works very well with the collection that I already have right now, and the collection I continue to expand on with every new release that NECA Toys put out. Have you seen the Hatchet films? If so, let me know what you guys think of the Victor Crowley figure presented here as a Toony Terrors release. Also, if you're new to this channel and you're liking all the content you're seeing, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Move the bell notification, turn that on, because of course that's your way of telling YouTube when you want new videos popping up, you'll get those friendly notifications. I'd also like to send out a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys that provided kindly the sample of Victor Crowley that we're having a look at in this review, or had a look in this review. Victor Crowley, along with this entire wave of Toony Terrors, is available right now in retail stores and online as well. Make sure as well you keep your peepers peeled to this channel Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as that's when new videos are always popping up. And I can also tell you, just a little whisper in your ear, there's more Toony Terror reviews coming soon, so keep those peepers peeled. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.